Happy 2023, guys. I hope everyone's having an awesome start to the new year. My name is Steve. Thank you for stopping by my channel. I'm just an American guy on a journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Today, we're going to be reacting to what do English people think about Americans? I've been seeing these types of videos pop up for quite a while now, and I've definitely been wanting to check them out. I think it's going to be really interesting to see the perspective that your everyday average British person has about Americans and America as a whole. I think I know some of the stereotypes that may be brought up here, but I'm not really sure. Americans definitely have their fair share of stereotypes, and that's fair. Every country has their fair share of stereotypes, obviously. But I think with America, sometimes people outside of America generalize the whole country as being a certain way and having certain personality traits and things like that. But when you really get into America to really truly understand the different personality types and value systems and things like that, you really have to break it down to more of the state level. Because when you look at how populated this country is and how vast this country is spread apart, you begin to realize that each state is almost like its own unique individual country. I mean, my home state, for example, I think it has around 12 to 14 million. I can't remember exactly. 12 million the last time I checked. So when you look at that, that's the size of many European countries. And when you look at how spread apart these countries, these states are, you begin to realize, yeah, it's very easy for them to have different average personality traits in each state, different value systems on average in each state, and so it's really hard to get a true, accurate generalization of America as a whole. Some things, yes, but a lot of things is going to be very hard because people are going to be vastly different from state to state. And when I drive through this country, it's almost like I am visiting different countries when I go to different states. And so, when I moved from my home state to where I am now, the culture is just completely different. Now, it is true, as Americans, there are going to be certain value systems that tie us together, certain personality traits that probably tie most people together in a way. But I just wanted to mention that I think sometimes Americans are generalized as all the same, when in fact, that's so not true. When you really get in here and you go from state to state, you begin to realize, wow, this really is like 50 different countries within a country. And so, yeah, guys. Enough of me rambling. I am ready to check out what do English people think about Americans.
Hello, welcome to Easy English. So today I'm on the beach and I want to know what the people of Brighton think of their cousins across the pond. This is what Brits think of Americans. Here we go.
All right, let's see what this is.
What are your just general thoughts on Americans?
My general thoughts on Americans are, I think they're quite brash, they're quite loud people. I was actually kicked off of Facebook for 24 hours for making a remark about the Americans.
There's a big contrast.
Would I say that Americans are brash as a whole? I don't really think so. I think you could probably I think I can understand why that could be seen as that way. Certain areas and certain states in America tend to have more brash, loud people. Think of the New York City personality, and they're very boisterous, very loud and whatnot. But if you go to other places, like if you go down to a lot of the South, you'll see these people tend to be a little bit more quiet, and each area in the country is a little bit different. So, everybody's who they are, and some people are going to be quiet, some people are going to be loud, just like any other country. And I think, obviously, this is pretty easily to understand that loud people are going to be more noticeable. So, if you, for example, get tourists over from America into England or anywhere else in the UK, you're probably going to notice the really loud ones more often than the quiet ones. On the media and in our culture, you're going to hear and see the loud ones more than the quiet ones. So obviously it's going to make it appear as more Americans are just really brash and loud than is actually the case. because, I mean, I think that's going to be that case for most groups of people. Now, it might be said that as a whole, Americans possibly could be louder than a lot of European countries. I'm not really sure. But I think that that's a stereotype that doesn't fit certain areas and certain states in America. But it does fit other states a little bit better, and cities and things like that.
Between everybody's, not just England's, but everybody's awareness of American culture through films and TV series and stuff, and then how it is in real life. And they have a reciprocal lack of understanding of other people's cultures, partly maybe because their media system is just so big and it pumps out so much stuff. Like, they'll remake everything, right? The Ring, The Office, the this, the that. They remake it in their own light. So they don't get as much cultural education as maybe other countries do.
First of all, what are your general thoughts on Americans, US citizens?
Okay, I suppose mainly we meet Americans when we travel abroad anyway. Yeah. And so we see them as tourists and don't always have the best opinion of them as tourists. They're quite loud and brash and and I guess weight is an interesting issue as well, because we always see very overweight Americans. Yeah. So that's sort of perception.
I think, again, with the loud and brash personality, you're going to notice those people more. I mean, it really is that simple. You know, like if I look around me, like I'm not really a loud person. I'm actually a fairly quiet, introverted person in general. And I really personally I can't think of anybody in my life that I would consider loud. You know, and I think it really does depend on the area you live in America. And I think when those people become tourists, those people are just as loud as they are when they're at home being loud, you know? So I think that is just something that those people are more noticeable than people that aren't as loud.
Right. My thoughts a bit mixed in a way, okay. Because as we were growing up in poverty-stricken England, when Americans came over here, they always seemed to have lots of money and perhaps a little bit louder than we are.
One thing I'd like to say is that there's the loud again. And I mean, there might be some truth to that. I'm not saying there's no truth to that as a whole compared to certain groups of people. But I'm just sitting here saying this, like, that is something I personally noticed in certain areas I visited America. I definitely noticed some people being louder. But having seen that, I also been to areas in the country, and the part of the country I'm from, generally speaking, aren't loud or boisterous in general. But what like to say about the money, probably why they looked like they had money is because if they could travel to countries overseas, they probably had a little bit more money than the average American did in the first place. Because if a person from a country doesn't have much money, they're probably not going to be able to travel abroad very often.
However, after holidaying in America, I've found them incredibly kind, quite sort of gentle and interested in people in England and the royal family, which I didn't know that much about, and also incredibly polite on the roads because they don't drive as fast as we do.
And how about you?
That's interesting. We don't drive as fast as you do. I mean, I obviously have no way of knowing that, but from when I visited Asian countries, I can tell you that I felt much safer on American roads. I mean, it was crazy how wild people drove there. I have no idea what goes on in UK roads, but I mean, I wish I had perspective there. I really don't, because I've never been driving on a road or riding on a road in the UK. But maybe some people that have been to America from the UK, did you have that same thought when you came here?
What are your thoughts on the Americans?
I think they can be rude and abrupt.
Yeah.
I don't like Donald Trump. Not many people do.
No.
They can be rude and abrupt. I mean, like, again, like, I mean, it's like some people can. I mean, when I've gone to the countries I've gone to, there's been very rude and abrupt people, but as a whole, I wouldn't say the people themselves were rude and abrupt. Some people within the society, but I wouldn't generalize an entire country that I've been to as being rude and abrupt because I've met rude and abrupt people. You know, from my experience, I don't personally feel people in America are rude and abrupt. I think some people are, again. I think just like some people are loud, and those loud people tend to be the ones that are noticed the most. I think, you know, rude and abrupt people are doing rude and abrupt things that you're going to notice more. You know, I think a lot of this comes down, a lot of the stereotypes and generalizations come down to who's being noticed more, not necessarily what's the average person in that country like. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Experience of being with Americans in America is that they were always very friendly and very welcoming.
Okay.
And particularly in New York, for example, I met quite a few people in New York, and they were like firm but fair, and I think they're very honest.
Only through the sort of...
I wonder if he means firm is also kind of that, because I agree. I think New Yorkers, like New York City, they can be some people that are a little louder, but they generally are good people. And I think sometimes they're people that aren't used to that type of boisterous personality that a lot of New Yorkers have, because they're in this type of city environment that kind of creates this type of loud personality. So I think a lot of people look at that as kind of maybe them being rude or something, but in fact, I don't think it's really that. I think it's perhaps firm is a good way to describe them. Firm but fair. That's interesting. I'm obviously not from New York. I'm not, but I've known quite a few people from New York.
I suppose the stereotypes that you know and create through yourself, whether they've seen as a nation very patriotic, compared to what perhaps we're more divided about that here. I think seems to be from whatever political background they are in America. I'd say they all appear very to believe in the flag and freedom of speech and all the the various amendments that they have.
Yeah.
But so I think they're probably more together in some ways than perhaps we are on certain things. But they're also very different from different polarizing views as well, I suppose.
I think, yeah, I would say that from what I've learned I don't think it's that. Since I've been on this journey, I don't think it's that Americans are more patriotic necessarily than people in the UK. I mean, I think they're more outwardly showing of that patriotism on a regular basis. I think, you know, when British people come out to be patriotic, they come out and they have really cool celebrations of patriotism. I've seen some of these, the proms, for example, the last night of the proms, for example. But, you know, I think that Americans as a whole are probably not all Americans. Some Americans aren't patriotic at all, but as a whole, I think maybe we as a country are more overtly, like outwardly showing a patriotism on a regular basis. Yeah.
General overview of US citizens is it's a vast mixture. This country is a small mixture, but yeah, lots of people think Americans are the big country, lazy, fat, as a lot of people say, but I've met and worked with Americans who are just not like that. And people from different states next door behave and act totally differently.
Thank you. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. He hit it on the head. It's like, yes, you're going to have every type of you got 330 million people here, 50 odd states, right? You're going to have every single personality type and trait you can imagine. And some of those people of certain types of personality traits and types are going to be a little more easily spotted by others. They're, you know, the louder you are, the more you're going to be noticed. The more rude you are, the more you're going to be noticed when you're a tourist. Things like that. The kind little old lady, for example, isn't going to be noticed as much as the guy who's the 30-year-old guy who's screaming drunk at a bar. You know, they're just not going to be, you know, it's got two different types of personalities, and they're going to be noticed vastly different. And I think that's where some of these stereotypes get wrong is, yeah, I mean, it's that simple. And it's true. Like, you go to the state next door, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be just as different going from, you know, if I go from one state to the next, it may be like going from England to Ireland in personality traits, values, character, you know, so forth and so on. You know what I'm saying?
I've not traveled too much in the US. However, I've been to the East Coast, New York and Boston. My perception has been very good. New Yorkers slightly more brash than the Bostonians, I guess, but I think the perception is very much that they are slightly naive, ignorant, perhaps. And you get this perception that they're all obese and love huge portions. I can agree on the huge portions, but I don't know if it's fair that they're all naive and ignorant. And I guess on the reverse, that they think that we are very posh and all speak well and drink tea and eat scones. And again, that's not who we all are.
That's very true. I think a lot of people do have the stereotype about Britain that that there's this one accent and you all sit down at 3 p.m. and drink tea and eat scones. I think that is a stereotype that people do think of because it's just certain types of people, certain personality types, or in any country, always, you know, they're shown in the forefront of culture.
Nice.
But yeah, I think there are a lot of stereotypes.
Well, I'm a bit biased because I've got relatives in America. So yeah, I've got relatives in California, and I think they're great. They're really friendly and open.
And do they have any character traits that kind of connect them all together, that you say are like outstanding character traits?
I think they're very warm and friendly and hospitable. But I do love English people too. But don't get me wrong.
Okay, this is going to be interesting. Have you been to the US? Okay.
You've been to the US?
Yes, I have.
Whereabouts in the US have you been?
I did the Florida thing, went to Universal Studios, etc. And it was fantastic. Had a fantastic time. The Americans were lovely. It was very clean. So yeah, I had a really good time there.
Okay.
And they seem to like the English.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, we are their cousins, so you have to be slightly
true.
nice to us.
I think that's a stereotype. I don't know if that's a stereotype, but I think a lot of people from the UK, especially when it comes to England, seem to think that Americans have some sort of issue with England. And I think that goes back to, you know, the kind of the beginnings of America, and people still think that's a thing, and it's really not. I've never met any American. I can't think I've ever met any American that's ever had any issue with England or ever said anything. You know, a lot of the people that I know have some ancestry from the area. Most likely, I obviously don't know. I haven't looked at everybody's ancestry, but from what I can tell, I believe they probably do. And yeah, I think that people generally look at the UK as kind of a cousin of sorts, which is how a lot of times we're described. And so I think people in the UK are described the same way, kind of cousins across the pond, if you will.
My aunt used to live there as well in New York. So I remember New York in the early 70s and travelling down on my own on a Greyhound bus from the airport out to where she lived, and I was 15 years old. I don't think you probably let that happen now.
Whereabouts in America did you go to?
We've been to California twice, and we've also been to Florida
so
and
east and
New
west.
York.
New York.
Yes.
I've worked with quite a few people from the US, I suppose, through work, primarily from the East Coast and then some from the West Coast. But I think there's such a different range of people across the States because it's such a vast country.
Yeah.
Vastly different sort of cultures and the demographics, really. So I suppose it depends on where you go, what different kind of people you experience.
If you could take a character trait or a cultural thing from the US and bring it to UK to improve like UK life or UK culture, is there something that you like that you take?
That would be really hard for me to come up. If no matter what country I'm in, sit there and think of what if I had one thing I could bring over. It's like, wow. You know, there's a number of things I've learned about on this journey so far that I really like about the UK. And so it'd be really hard for me to decide one thing off the top of my head that I would bring over. But I think right off the top of my head, one thing I think of is the way your food system is set up, the food regulations and things like that, where it seems like you care a little bit more about what you're putting into your bodies, especially your kids' bodies. And that's definitely something that is a stressful situation for anybody who's trying to eat well in America. You got to always watch out for all this junk that's in the food. And that is one thing right off the top of my head that I absolutely would bring over if I had the opportunity. There are many others, but that's probably the first thing that pops in my head because it's such an important thing I've been focused on lately is like how bad the food quality can be in America. I mean, I can get good quality food, but you got to go out of your way and spend a lot of extra time and money to do so.
Yeah, I think I'm a huge sports fan. I think the college sport is amazing. And yeah, so I went to university and played first team tennis, but I was playing in front of maybe 3 people, whereas over there it's as big as, you know, some big tournaments, and I think it's the same for all sport.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. College sports here are huge. I think we've talked about that before. And I love college sports. I don't even really watch professional sports. College sports are pretty much all I focus on here because I think they're better than professional sports, at least in America. You know, just college basketball is my absolute favorite sport. It's basketball season right now, watching that. Not as much as I used to, but I definitely enjoy it. But when I go try to watch like the NBA and professional basketball, I can't get into it. It seems almost like a soap opera to me. It almost seems fake in a way. College sports are just like, you know, they're young people that are really competing. It feels like once you get to the point you're kind of a professional, at least for some of the sports here, it doesn't feel like they're competing as hard. And in college, you definitely can see they're like competing really hard. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it is a different vibe, but I definitely enjoy the college sports.
So I think that culture of sports in college and university being of huge importance to getting into professional sport would be really, really cool.
Right, because you get kind of sponsored.
Yeah, you get sponsored and you get drafted into the professional leagues as well.
Right, nice, well said.
I guess their lack of reserve, I suppose, how does that contrast with how you see people in our country? Americans are more, they give their opinion more freely, I think.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think we probably could learn a bit more from that. We're sometimes too reticent, too shy to say what we think, too closed, whereas Americans are much more open. You can sort of tell what they're thinking and feeling.
Right. Is there?
Would you say that, would you say that British people on average, and Irish as well, you know, I'm not trying to leave them out of this because they're part of my journey as well. But obviously this video is about English people. But do people as a whole in the Isles, do you think they tend to be more reserved than Americans? I'm sitting there trying to think. So I really can't compare it. You know, it's hard for me to compare it. Like, you know, obviously I've met British people, but I've never been to the UK. So it's hard for me without going there to really fully know if I think that you guys are more reserved than we are. And obviously, there are plenty of reserved people and plenty of people that are completely open with their opinions here. Depends on where you go and who you get. But that's an interesting one. That's interesting.
Anything that you would take from their culture or from their sort of personality traits that would improve Britain?
Yes, they seem to be quite happy to what we call blow your own trumpet.
I like
whereas we always downplay anything about ourselves.
Interesting.
And I think that's good. I think it must be good for children to have confidence in themselves. Yes.
Yeah, you can toot your own horn
yes,
as well.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We're quite. You have to be self-deprecating.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
That's interesting. I don't know if that's the case or not. Again, it's one of those things that I can't compare really, but I'm not really someone that I'm not a bragger or anything like that. If I do something good, I'm not the type that really goes and has to share it with everybody. But I do feel pretty confident. And I definitely think it's very important to instill confidence in kids. I think it's perfectly good to make sure your kids, when they do something awesome, when they're proud of themselves, make them realize how awesome it is they did that thing, and it just instills a level of confidence they take into adulthood, if you know what I'm saying.
That positivity, I think, generally, I think would go down pretty well, I think.
Is this saying that we're a bit self-deprecating or something? Or?
Self-deprecation is fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a nice trait. But I think sometimes it can go a bit far. And I think a lot of people can put themselves down, or it can be a bit oppressive.
Right.
The British can be a bit oppressed.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the Americans are much more open to what life can bring.
Yeah.
The one thing I think Americans have got, which a lot of people don't agree with, is they believe in their country. Majority, perhaps not everyone, but I think Americans say, hang on,
Yeah.
And they're proud of it. And I think Britons should be the same. And there's lots of reasons why they're probably not.
Yeah.
But we should be proud of what we got.
It's seen as a bit of a faux pas here to be kind of proud of your nation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. People are embarrassed, I think, too.
Thanks for watching this week's episode. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on the US citizens, and we'll see you next week.
That was really interesting. Guys, you should totally be proud of your country. It doesn't matter if you're from England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, or the Republic of Ireland. Be proud of your country. And obviously, there's probably other people in the comments, but generally speaking, those are the places most of my audience is from. But, no matter where you're from, be proud of the good things your country has done. Every country's done negative things. Every country has negative aspects to it. But you know what? Don't focus so much on the negative. Focus on the positive. And I hope you do. I'm the type of person that I'm a very generally upbeat, positive person. And I generally don't try to focus on the negative too much. And focusing on negative really doesn't get you anywhere, to be honest. It doesn't really focus on negative. Definitely doesn't make things happier or more positive. So, from my experience, it seems like people, I don't know if that's just a stereotype, but from British people I've met, generally speaking, do love their country and are proud of their country. And it's just they might not be as outwardly showing it as Americans from what I've experienced so far. But I think what I got from this mostly is that the main things that it seems that people who have been to America look at Americans as generally friendly and open people. People look at Americans as loud and boisterous and brash in some cases, very opinionated, where we share our opinions a little bit more, maybe have quite a bit of confidence in a way, things like that. I can appreciate that. I think some of these they're obviously not true for everybody. But as a whole, I think a lot of this made sense, how people across the pond could see us as being loud and stuff. Because again, I think that's the personality trait you're going to see more than the people who are quiet. Just like you're going to see extroverted people more than you're going to see introverted people. You're going to see the person who's out having a loud, boisterous conversation more than the woman who's just sitting there quietly reading a book. You know what I mean? And so I think, there's a stereotype that Americans are stupid. Obviously not the case. Some Americans are stupid. And since we have 330 million people, we definitely have a lot of stupid people. Let's just be honest. If you have that many people, you're going to have a lot of every type of person. But when it comes to, for example, that wasn't mentioned here, but I've heard that before. And I think simply that stereotype is, again, because that is what is pushed to the front of our culture. And that's what you see more than the people who are really intelligent. The people who are really intelligent aren't being pushed to the forefront of our culture. And so you're not seeing those people. And I think that's the same way with a lot of societies and a lot of cultures. You see, in a lot of ways, you see the loud, you see the boisterous, you see all these different things that don't necessarily represent everybody across the board, or even the average person in a lot of cases. But I thought this was very fair. There was some things that may be perceived as negative, but some things that were perceived as positives. And I think that's absolutely fair and great. And I think that every country has positive and negative things. And I think we should be open to acknowledging both the positive and negative within our societies, no matter what country we're from. And obviously, I would never, a lot of people, and it annoys me when people, I can come from the aspect of Americans in this way, just think that America is just the greatest place ever made in every way. There's nowhere better on this world, on this planet, in any way. We have it made in every way. And it's just like, that's simply not true. And that's a stereotype that unfortunately a lot of Americans have. But you know what? There are people in every single country that think that way about their country. There are people in the UK that think the UK is the best place on earth. There's nowhere better in any way. Maybe not as many people as in America think that way, perhaps. I don't know. But I'm just trying to say that I think that we all should acknowledge the negatives and positives we have. Some of the stereotypes are true. Some are not true. But yeah, guys, I thought this was fun. I thought this was really interesting to see this perspective. I know this was a small sampling, so I'd definitely like to check out some more at some point. All right, guys, thank you for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others that you think I might enjoy checking out. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Until next time, guys, peace.